Welcome to another episode of Alternatively Speaking, where we're exploring cutting-edge innovations in longevity that are reshaping the future of healthcare. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by a true pioneer in the field of epigenetics. Dr. Moshe Szyf is a geneticist and James McGill Professor of Pharmacology and Therapeutics at the McGill University in Montreal, where he also holds the GlaxoSmithKline Chair in Pharmacology. In addition to all of that, he is the Chairman, CEO, and Chief Scientific Officer of HKG Epitherapeutics. So, do you need to know what epigenetics actually is before you listen to this episode? Absolutely not, but here's a definition anyway. According to the CDC, epigenetics refers to how your behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. Unlike genetic changes or mutations, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change the sequence of DNA bases, but they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence. What does all of that actually mean? Dr. Szyf elegantly explains all of that in this episode. His groundbreaking work in epigenetics has earned him international recognition, including fellowships at the Royal Society of Canada and the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences. As a founding figure in behavioral and psychiatric epigenetics, he has authored more than 300 influential papers and is a sought-after speaker, having presented at the Nobel Forum and delivered a TED Talk on the impact of DNA and early life experiences. At HKG Epitherapeutics, Dr. Szyf and his team are harnessing the power of epigenetics to revolutionize personal healthcare. Through their innovative testing devices, they analyze DNA programming to provide individuals with unprecedented insights into disease risk, aging, and environmental exposures. In our discussion today, Dr. Szyf will take us on a deep dive into the world of epigenetics, explaining how it differs from traditional genetic testing, the role it plays in empowering people to make informed healthcare decisions, and the exciting breakthroughs on the horizon as this field continues to evolve. From early disease detection to longevity management, epigenetics is poised to unlock a new era of precision medicine. Join us as we explore this transformational technology and how it may be coming to a doctor's office or even a pharmacy near you. We are talking today with Dr. Moshe Szyf, Chairman, CEO, CSO of HKG Epitherapeutics. Thank you so much for joining us today. You know, as we talk about longevity and really focus on what that means and what new technologies, what science is being supported, where investors are putting their money, really trying to wrap our brains around all of this. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work at HKG?
Yes, of course. I've been a professor at McGill University for the last 3.5 decades, and my work has focused on epigenetics since its early days. We pioneered some of the early concepts in epigenetics and specifically DNA methylation. And just a few words, what is epigenetics? Epigenetics is the software that programs the DNA. So if we think about our genetics, our genes as an operating system that runs our computer, which is our book of life, epigenetics is the software that creates different apps that allow the same DNA to run many, many different tissues, the same way Android allows your phone to do so many different kinds of functions. And these apps are written when we are babies in the womb of our mothers, and they are making sure that our DNA will function properly in every tissue of our body and that we will live a long and a healthy life. And so for many years, we investigated what happens to this program when we get sick. And it seems that bugs in those apps can cause many of the chronic diseases. That's why epigenetics is so important in understanding disease. But recently, we learned that it's also important in understanding how the environment talks to our DNA. So not only the DNA is programmed when we are babies in the womb of our mothers, and that program is quite predictable, the environment can shape also how our epigenetics is programmed. Essentially, it allows the environment to write programs on our DNA and to prepare us for our lives. And we learned that the environment does not necessarily have to include toxins or bad things that happen or global warming or things like that, a bullying boss is probably as dangerous as poison. And behavioral environments play a very important role in how our DNA is programmed, not only before we were born, but also during our lives. So our DNA is ticking and living and dynamic. It's programmed during our early life, but it keeps being programmed during our lives. And we learned also that aging is a change in the program, and actually a predictable change in the program. As we age, our software changes, and we move from a software of a baby to a software of an old man. And we can actually follow that by looking at changes in the way the DNA is methylated. And that is the basis of all the biological clocks. I founded Hong Kong Epitherapeutics in 2016 to harness the epigenome for clinical medicine, to use the epigenetics science to produce tools that will allow us to detect disease early and to follow our health and well-being and to provide guidance to maintain a healthy state of our body and our DNA. So what we do in our company is study the science and develop tools to use the science of epigenetics to predict disease, to predict aging, and to follow up behavioral and environmental exposures.
So Dr. Szyf, at HKG, you guys have a number of different testing devices.
Yes.
How is epigenetics testing different from, say, a traditional blood test?
Traditional blood tests focused on proteins. Proteins are really the last step in the interpretation of the book of life, which is DNA. So first we have the genetics, then we have the epigenetics, then we have the RNA, and then we have the proteins. So traditionally we looked at proteins. They are the tools that actually do the business of the body. And we can monitor certain proteins that, it can come from cancer cells or can come from a failing heart or can predict heart attacks. And all these are extremely important, but they don't provide information on the computer itself, on the software and the hardware that is at the basis of all of these events. So recently, in the last few decades, genetic tests have evolved where we can actually study our genes, study how our genes are transcribed, and all these can give us some ideas about disease. And now we're moving towards the DNA itself, studying the software that programs the DNA and developing tests that are based on that software. So it gives us a much closer insight into the dynamic changes of the heart of our living, which is the DNA.
First of all, I love the comparison, the analogy to a computer and its hardware and software systems. I think it's really helpful, and I think it's a really great way to tell the story. So I just really like that and appreciate that. I want to talk about how your business works. I think I want to talk about how your goal is to provide at-home testing kits, which you do, to consumers, to give them, to put the power in their hands on gaining better insight to health and aging. Is there a downside to maybe knowing too much? Like, are people prepared for this?
Yes, I think we have to start thinking differently about bad news. And bad news are really good news because they allow you to take control of your health. Sometimes we think that by not knowing, we will do better, right? Because we don't want to know that we have an impending heart attack or an impending cancer or an impending fast aging or mental, deterioration, etc. But that is the old concept because we didn't know how to deal with these things. So cancer used to be a death sentence. It's not anymore. Cancer is becoming more and more a manageable situation. And if we detect cancer early, if we are successful in that, then cancer hopefully would become as an easily manageable health situation rather than a disease. And, you'll go to the clinic, deal with it for half a day, and it's over. And so we have to start educating our own psyche that knowing these things is not a death sentence, it's actually a life sentence. It allows us to live longer and to avoid the consequences of chronic disease, such as cancer, heart attack, diabetes, etc. What we're developing is tests that can detect disease early, because what we're looking at is how our program, our software is bugged. We have now the technology to read the script, and we can identify pieces of DNA in our blood that have a script that tells us that they came from a cancer cell, or that they came from a dying heart cell, or one day maybe from a dying brain cell. And these can give us a very early red flag that we need to take control of things. And we need to start looking at health as one of the other issues that we need to take control of. And we're trying to provide some of the tools that will help people take control of their lives. But of course, there is a downside, because we are people after all. We are emotional, and we might misunderstand those tests. And we might overinterpret them. We might be terrified by them. And of course, psychological stress is bad for you, as I said in the beginning. So on one hand, we're trying to make people more healthy by providing them tools to prevent deterioration in their health situation. On the other hand, if it is interpreted as a traumatic event or as a stress, that itself can cause them to be sicker.
Right.
So of course, it requires a whole change in education of both healthcare providers and the public to understand that we're moving from an era where disease was, a fate that you could not control, to health situations rather than disease that you have to manage, and that we have more and more better and better tools to manage. And health management is becoming the goal of this process.
So Dr. Szyf, like, how does the whole process work? Because you have a number of different tests on your website. Like, say I want to do a cancer detection test, and
Yes.
you have 5 different ones on there. So if I just like the liver, the epiliver,
Right.
I order that from you. It comes to me. What is the process from there? What do I do? What are the next steps?
Right. It's a very good question. So we have to differentiate between two kinds of tests that we provide. There are tests that are more like lifestyle, general health tests that we provided directly to the consumer. For example, the age test or the metagen test or the smoking test. And we hope to develop more of those tests, environmental exposure tests, psychiatry tests, etc. These are available on the website. You can order them. We will send you a kit. You spit into the kit based on our instructions. You put it in an envelope and send it back to the address that is on the envelope. That's easy, and because we believe that these tests could be handled even by the consumer, you don't need a health provider to support you. However, we recommend that even these tests will be in consult with a health provider, because there's no point doing the test without consulting a health provider what to do about the test. There's another kind of test, like you mentioned, a cancer test, early detection, let's say liver cancer. We advise that people who are at risk for liver cancer to take this test. We suggest that these people will talk to their healthcare provider, and the healthcare provider would prescribe the test and draw the blood and send it to us according to our instructions. The blood will go through a very long process. Actually, there are almost 600 steps between the blood coming to our lab and a report that will be delivered to the doctor. The report will be signed by our medical director. It will tell you whether we detected liver cancer DNA in the blood. It doesn't mean you have cancer. It just means there is liver cancer DNA. And of course, the doctor will then decide what is the next course of action. The doctor will have several options, probably retesting, and then doing more detailed testing and deciding on, what's the best clinical step to take to protect the person from cancer developing in the body.
So for the cancer detection devices, you're working with then like healthcare professionals and going directly to them? Or
Yes,
is this like if somebody is saying, oh, I have a history of this in my family, maybe I'll just order this online and then take it to my healthcare professional. Is that typically how it works, or are you guys basically?
We are now, we're starting the marketing and building our market. And my goal is that it will always be done through a health professional, because it's all these tests. You need somebody who understands what they mean, so the person doesn't overreact, and the person has a course of action. There's no point scaring somebody. Or scaring yourself, because it's not scary to start with. But that's why you need advice from somebody who knows how to interpret the test. We hope that soon we will have at least advice of doctors that we have trained to interpret the tests, so they could be, and we'll make a list of those as a suggestion who to go to. But generally, we advise that if a person wants to do a cancer test, an early detection cancer test, to do it with a health provider. I think it's the better way to do it.
So why? I mean, I get my physical every year here in the U.S. Why isn't this part of the process for early detection? I mean, I get my blood tests, which is the proteins that you had talked about earlier. It gives me information, and I move on with my life. Why does it stop there? If this technology is available, why isn't it more widely used by practitioners and doctors?
In general, there's always a lag between, the progress of science and technology and its adoption in the health system. Mm-hmm. The healthcare system is conservative, which is good, and it's slow to adopt new technologies till they are absolutely confident about its efficacy. The tests we're talking about are really new, and the practice of these tests in the general health practice is very short. We haven't been using them for a long time. So it doesn't surprise me that the average doctor would not recommend you to use it. We need to spend a lot of effort on education of the health professions, because these tests were not there when they went to medical school, and they're not part of the standard, medical textbooks. They might have been talked about as, as a vision for the future, but it wasn't realized. I mean, the other issue is there is no capacity to do these tests yet. And one of the goals of our company is just to create the capacity for doing epigenetic tests. The clinical laboratories of today are not equipped to do these kind of
things. Okay.
So we need to build that. Clinical epigenetics as a discipline is not even recognized as a discipline. So we are really at the early age of what I believe is a revolution in clinical lab medicine, where epigenetics will be introduced more and more into the clinical practice. But it will require a lot of work till this happens.
As we start to focus on longevity, and as the trend towards personal empowerment of, being your own advocate, being your own, healthcare provider. I mean, you're the us personally are the ultimate healthcare provider, right? We control what goes in our body food wise, the output with exercise, if we're around smoke, if we're, all of that stuff. So we really starts with us. Where do you see this type of technology in the future of both primary care and specialized care, like cancer and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's? What's the role potentially for technology like this?
These technologies will revolutionize, primary health maintenance, even before it becomes healthcare, right? We hope that we avoid healthcare. If we keep ourselves healthy, we will not need healthcare. So this will change really the health profession from treating disease to maintaining well-being and health, and will provide tools to be able to do that, because we'll be able to intervene much earlier and prevent deterioration much earlier, so it doesn't happen. It will have to change medicine as well, right? We're discussing this. So what happens when you have an early detection of cancer? Doctors don't even know what to do with it in most cases, right? So we will need to develop a new medicine, how you deal with cancers that are discovered early, because we still treat cancers that are discovered early like cancers that are discovered late.
Because you just wait for another test, right? They're like, oh, I'd like to see you in 6 months.
Exactly.
To test
so
again.
We'll wait for a big tumor so we can see it, right? And we can take it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so.
So there's a huge catch up that needs to happen.
There's a huge catch up.
Okay.
And I think, like any technology, in the beginning, you don't know whether you will use it, and you think people will not use it. And I always use the emergence of train as a transportation means. When the train started, a lot of economists said it has no financial viability, because people counted how many people ride horses and coaches, and they found out it's a very small number, and they would not be able to pay, the cost of a train system. But what happens when technology comes, people start needing it. When I was young, I didn't need a cell phone. It was only used by, top CEOs or, prime ministers or generals. And then every person, every kid has a cell phone, because once you give the technology to people, they start understanding that they can use it and it's useful for them. This technology will be used by everyone, but it will take some time for people to learn what it can do. And it's not just the doctors that will push it, it's also the patients or the people who use the healthcare system that will start pressuring their doctors to use these kinds of methods in their health maintenance. And there will be a revolution, big revolution in the way the doctor sees himself or herself, or the other health providers, as counsels rather than as gods that determine your fate, and as people that give you advice on how to maintain your health, rather than people who take care of the catastrophe of disease. and health as something that you manage and you consult your health provider, but you control.
What would you say is the most shocking thing that a consumer has learned about their own health after taking your tests? Are there any examples that you could provide?
So let's say the aging test. Some people will discover that they're much older than they should be. When this happens, usually they would ask for a retest, and when the retest confirms the first test, it implies that they need to do something. So they either can. So in the beginning, the response is, "I don't believe it. The test is bad. I will take another kind of test." That's one approach.
Right.
And we, in our test as a policy, in difference from other companies, don't ask any of our customers, or whatever you call them, patients. I don't call them patients because they are healthy people. And they are chronological age, right? I don't want to know their age because I want to do the test completely objective. So we don't ask their race, we don't ask for their sex, we don't ask for their age. We want to do the test and we send the results to them. And now they can, they know their age and they can figure out, what the test says. But sometimes they do consult us and they ask us, what do you think? Why did it happen that, I exercise, I don't smoke? There are cases where they do all the bad things and obviously they find that, they take the test as a warning to start changing their lives, and they do, they take control of their lives. But sometimes they don't understand why they're older. But a very small investigation will find out that there was something extremely dramatic in their life, almost invariably, either loss of a spouse or a partner, or loss of a parent, or extreme stress. And we find out that stress is probably one of the most common causes of biological aging. And this is not just our anecdotal information. There's quite a lot of papers that suggest that. So a person can now start taking, control of stress. Could be controlled as well. It's harder to control than other things, but it could be controlled. Not the things that stress you. I mean, you cannot, bring to life a partner that you lost, but you definitely can take some steps to reduce the stress that you're experiencing. And so people who do take the test and get these kinds of results usually make changes in their lives, and hopefully to the better of improving, their well-being. If it's a cancer test, we suggest don't get too excited, and we'll do another test. There's always a possibility something went wrong, and if another test will reproduce the first test, and then the step is to go to your doctor and to find out what's going on. And we had, here and there, we didn't do many tests, a few thousand, and some people discover their cancer for the first time with this test. And I know one story who discovered it very early and took it out, and that's it. And so, taking out a small cancer could be a tooth extraction. If it's big, it's a big thing. So that's where these tests could be very helpful.
Do you think that there has been, and maybe it's like a recency bias thing, but a resurgence in the empowerment of your own healthcare and your autonomy? And, since COVID, I feel like there has been such a focus on keeping yourself healthy, keeping your neighbors healthy, keeping your community healthy. And it always surprises me. The book, The Body Keeps the Score, by Bessel van der Kolk, is constantly on the New York Times bestseller list. And it is not a new book. So are you finding that there's more receptivity to technologies like this and to testing like this than there would have been 10 years ago?
Yeah, for sure, more than 10 years ago. I think COVID did multiple things. One, it did suggest that people can take certain steps that can improve their well-being or protection from disease. It also gave more autonomy to people because they started questioning the medical establishment, and which is not a bad thing necessarily. You see, the idea that a healthcare provider is the ultimate, judge, has been shattered, and I think it's good. And people started trying to figure out themselves what's going on. And I know a lot of my colleagues don't like the fact that, patients are questioning them. But I think that's a positive step. And also self-education, because of the nature of the people became knowledgeable about things. First, they were all over the place. People started learning medicine. People started knowing what's the difference between an mRNA antibody and, a regular antibody and a DNA-based antibody. And they started arguing about adverse effects and risk. And so there was a tremendous education of the public in stuff that only professionals knew before the epidemic. So we have a combination of more autonomy of the patient, of shattering of the, omnipotency of, the medical establishment, and of this idea of self-learning and learning more about things. So I think the world is open now to new medical technologies. And also we have the technology to deliver this knowledge, which is the development, of course, of media. Everybody can go and search for a medical paper. Everybody, all the information is out there. To a certain extent, it's like the revolution of the printing of the book. Which changed, religion, and eventually, led to the Renaissance. And because once everybody can read a book, everybody can question the minister about what's written in the Bible, right? Now the Bible is not just taught orally. You can buy yourself the book and read the Bible and question it. And the same thing happened, today with media. Now everybody, you don't need to have to go to a library, a medical library, which is only limited to, super professionals who keep their social club away from you. But everybody can go to PubMed. They might understand or not understand parts of the things, but the media created also ways for lay people to understand medicine, and therefore they can control it. It's not it's not the mystery in the clouds that is so far from them that they need just this authority to tell them, what it is. So I think it's the revolution comparable to the print that, provided people with ability to gain knowledge, not just by listening to some authority, but by, buying the book themselves and reading it and learning it. We are at this stage. It will revolutionize medicine for sure. How fast it will go, we don't know, but things really move fast. And of course, medical schools will have to adjust themselves to this new kind of world. And because till now, medical schools are still teaching the same way they taught in the Middle Ages, and selecting people who can memorize things the way they did in the Middle Ages. And of course, memorizing was a good talent when there were no books. But today, the talent.
Now we've got the internet.
Right. So a doctor needs a complete different set of talents to cope with all this technology and with a public that is knowledgeable and that keeps us questioning and keeps challenging the medical profession. So we can't even appreciate, the revolution in medicine that is happening. And COVID just accelerated it. It would have happened anyways, but COVID has accelerated all these processes of autonomy, a rebellion that comes with autonomy, and a wide landscape of public knowledge that didn't exist before.
So, Dr. Szyf, I'm sure you are aware of Brian Johnson, who is reversing his biological age, or trying to, from whatever, 46
He's
or
like
47.
he's like 13 right now.
Yeah.
Have you offered him, like, hey, take our test, let's see how old you are?
We didn't offer it to him. We usually, we're not involved in marketing ourselves, and so this is kind of, and I mean, I don't like this celebrity type of marketing, honestly.
Yeah.
And I am not sure about what Brian Johnson is doing, right? I don't think it's applicable to a lot of people. First, it's extremely costly.
Yeah.
Second, it's
$2 million a year.
Yes. And actually, it is the bad side of these things that we try to solve. So we try to develop tools that are high throughput, that are cost effective. And we believe the revolution in medicine would not come with $2 million a year treatments. They will come with accessible, reasonable tools. But also, it's my philosophy that extreme steps are against the way biology works. Biology is all about homeostasis, is about maintaining a balance, and torturing yourself by starving yourself half the day and then feeding yourself with 120 different drugs. To me, even if he extends his life, I'm not sure what kind of life it is. So, life is all about the balance. It's a balance of enjoying yourself as well as protecting yourself. And enjoying has a lot of value. So even if his biological age looks early, we still are not sure that he's going to live very long. And, these dramatic steps that you're taking can have psychological effects on your brain that essentially eliminate the benefit that you get from, whatever drugs you're taking and super exercising and super fasting and things like that. And because we have to understand that food is not just energy to the body, it's also energy to the soul. Socializing is extremely important. Animals get cancer from lack of socializing. So, having dinner with friends is important, even if you think that fasting, from 2:00 to the next day, gives you some benefit, but you lose all the benefit that comes from drinking a glass of wine with your friends. So torturing yourself is not necessarily a way, to increase your health. It gives you a transient feeling of, resolving your problem, but the price you pay for it is very heavy. And we have to be very careful because these kind of regimes can lead to anorexia, which is a terrible disease. And we have always to balance the chemical things that we do with our body and the psychological things that we do with our body, because they are extremely important, not only to our psychological health, but also to our physical health, because our physical health is dependent on our brain. So being happy is probably one of the most important things to extend your life. And so we have to take a more balanced, a more socially viable approach. Let's say even if he succeeds, let's say he doubles his life. So we'll know that millionaires can double their lives. What kind of a message does it send to the public? What kind of impact does it have? Zero. How many billionaires do we have in the world? Not many. So even if all the billionaires will double their lives, it does nothing to the world, right? So we need to start thinking about more balanced approaches to life extension.
Do you see a role, or I would assume you see, but precision medicine is also having a moment. And this kind of this is precision medicine really at its base, right? What is the future of your company in precision medicine?
Sure. So one of the tools that we are developing is tools that can guide the health provider in deciding which drugs to use, in cases where drugs have to be used. For example, because epigenetics is controlling gene expression, certain drugs would work if people have certain genes expressed or not. That's very critical for cancer, but for other diseases. And I don't want to get into to become too technical, but there are more and more DNA methylation differences that define how you would react to drugs. So now the focus is on cancer. So certain cancer are treated with certain drugs. And if the target of this treatment is methylated, it will change the treatment. So you can guide your treatment of the patient by studying methylation of certain genes. And we are trying to develop these tools. So that's the extreme case. But more and more we'll understand that there's no one treatment fits all, right? Because we are a balance of things, and each one of us is a different balance. So what will work for one person will not work for the other. And the question is, how do we develop tools that will guide you in personalizing your changes? And this will not be possible at the lifestyle level. In cancer treatment where you use specific drugs and the targets, it will work beautifully, and we'll have more and more of this, that we will treat people with the treatment that fits them. And these tools will be extremely important, and they're becoming important. But there's also the other aspect. Okay, let's say that I find out that my biological aging is progressing very fast. What do I do, right? Do I exercise myself to death? Do I starve myself? Do I take all these drugs that Brian Johnson is taking? And perhaps, exercising is great for somebody, but not for everybody. Starving could be great for somebody, but not for everybody. And so combining tests like aging test with collection of data and keep testing. So you keep seeing which of the steps that you're doing are actually helping you and which are not. There's a constant reinforced learning. And obviously, when we collect this kind of data from more and more people and can develop machine learning tools to start personalizing which kind of people should do this and which should do that. Some people do a diet and they become slim and trim and healthy, and others become anorexic. So for some people, telling him, no, you're overweight, you should do a diet, will save their lives, and others, it will kill them. Can we find out who would become anorexic and who would become healthy? And it's true for any treatment. And I think a combination of data collection through technology with treatments like that assess your DNA state at multiple points in your process, so you get some indication, can create that reinforced learning where you can make changes that actually benefit you rather than changes that benefit the general crowd, but not necessarily you.
With the, I guess, epigenetics industry, is that the right terminology? I don't know. Are there any exciting breakthroughs or advancements that we can anticipate in the near future?
Of course. I mean, the major advancement will be in the technical improvement of the technology, that its accuracy will increase from what it is now to 100% or close to that. And that will make a huge difference. And that will require improvement in our technology. The other aspects will be discovery of epigenetic changes that can predict other chronic diseases, not such cancer, and especially cardiovascular disease. And of course, we all want to be able to connect our diet with, epigenetic changes, and to be able to use reinforced learning through monitoring epigenetic changes as a monitor of our metabolic state. So these are important changes. Of course, the tough ones are Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Could we detect it early, but not only detect it early, do something about it, and use epigenetic tools to monitor how our changes are improving our situation. So there's a lot to be done. We have just seen the tip of the iceberg. We need to build the capacity to provide the tests. We need to develop new ideas, and we need to educate ourselves and the healthcare community on how to apply these methods in the health care practice.
You mentioned this being the tip of the iceberg. We could talk for hours, but I'm very cognizant of your time here. Is there anything that you feel we've missed, or anything further you want to talk about as it relates to longevity and what you guys are doing at HKG?
I think we covered quite a lot. Of course, we can, as you said, we can keep talking about it, especially since it's the tip of the iceberg. So there's a lot of unknown, and you can talk more about the unknown than the known, because whatever you say, it might be true or not, but we can't test it yet. And there's more unknown. I think the most important thing to know is we're just in the beginning. Our technology is improving. It's not perfect. Our knowledge is greater than we had, but still there's a lot for us to learn. And we have to be humble about our expectations, and to know that we know certain things, but we don't know a lot of things. And we just keep learning and improving and using what we know to for the betterment of our well-being and our health.
Dr. Moshe Szyf, thank you so much. We really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.